So you're just getting started in the sourdough world, and let me be the first to welcome you. I'm sure you have lots of questions, and don't worry, I'm here to help you. Foodgeek to the rescue. Hi, I'm Sune, and I'm a food geek. Today I'm going to answer many of the common questions that people have when they're just starting out in the sourdough game. I've collected a list of questions that I get all the time, so I thought I'd make a video answering them. If you're new to this channel, I bake a lot of sourdough bread and I make delicious food from all over the world. If you want to see more of this content, please join me by subscribing and ringing the bell so you won't miss any future videos. Question number 1. Do I need to use a levain? The short answer is no, and the long answer is nope. As far as I know, there's really only one reason to use a levain, and that's to use the same flours that you're using in your bread. Maybe if you're keeping 100% rye starter, it can become pretty sour. On the other hand, putting a starter in a dough is like feeding it, so it'll stop being sour unless you use a large amount. If you need to make more starter than you already have, then just feed at a higher proportion. Just remember, the higher the proportion, the slower the starter will grow. Question number 2. Do I need to stretch and fold? People say a lot of things about stretch and folds. It incorporates air into the dough. It aligns the dough. Most of those things are malarkey, and basically what it does is develop gluten. That's the only thing it does. So if you mix your dough and then come back to it 2 hours later and you can pull a beautiful window pane, you don't need folds at all. You don't need to laminate, knead, or anything else. So the better the flour you have, with more potential gluten, the less need for folds. Let me tell you a bit of a secret. Gluten develops all by itself, given time. Since fermentation in sourdough is really slow, gluten will have ample time to develop all by itself. That being said, if you have a very high hydration dough, you may want to make sure that you help the gluten along. Bassinage is a method where you autolyse a lower hydration dough to get good gluten development, and then you mix in the rest of the water after you get the window pane. That's really only needed if you have a very soupy dough. Another method that can help with high hydration dough is slap and fold. But all of this is probably not something you should worry about when you're a beginner. Make bread in a reasonable hydration range, 60 to 70%, and worry about getting fermentation and the shaping right. Question number 3. Can I use a machine to mix? Absolutely. Mix for 5 minutes on 3 out of 10, check for a window pane. If it fails, then mix for another 2 minutes and check again. Keep going until the dough passes the window pane test. Then put it straight to fermentation. I have a sourdough master recipe for stand mixer. Follow the card above. Question number 4. How do I get a super open crumb? Get the right flour and perfect all of the techniques. Basically, don't worry about it until you can bake a bread and get it right every single time. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider becoming a member at Patreon. You can also buy some merch or use the links in the description for tools and ingredients. Question number 5. What type of folds are the best folds? Well, all of them or none of them. The answer is it doesn't matter much and it depends on the dough. If you have a low hydration dough, use kneading. If you have a medium to high hydration dough, use stretch and folds or coil folds. If you have a high to extreme high hydration, use slap and folds and lamination once you have a strong dough. Or you can just skip the folds and make a no-knead sourdough bread. Follow the card above for my no-knead sourdough master recipe. Question number 6. Can I just use any flour for sourdough bread? Yes, any wheat flour, hard or soft, can be used for sourdough bread. As a beginner, you should only use sifted flour, bread flour, or all-purpose flour. Switching between flours can stunt your growth as a baker because it's a very important variable in baking sourdough bread. The stronger your flour the higher hydration you can probably make with it. But just remember that high hydration is not a goal in itself. So just try out with 65 to 70% for starters. Ancient grains and whole grain are hard to work with. So you can't just use 100% spelt flour or 100% whole wheat flour. A good rule of thumb is that you can use 20% without any ill effects. But it will still make it a little bit harder to get perfect gluten development. So just keep that in mind. Question number 7. Can I substitute yeast-based recipes with sourdough? The short answer is no. The long answer is possibly, but you need to make many changes, not only to the ingredients, but also to the actual method. Don't try this until you know a lot about sourdough bread baking. If you really want to try, you can use my bread calculator to convert the ingredients from yeast-based doughs to sourdough-based doughs. Question number 8. Can you tell me how long to ferment my dough? Nope, nobody can. Fermentation of sourdough bread has a lot of different variables attached. Dough temperature, ambient temperature, the amount of starter in the dough, and the strength of your starter, to name a few. You can level the playing field by strengthening your starter. Watch my video on my 5 best sourdough starter tips. Also, using a proofer, always set to the same temperature, can help you get an idea when fermentation is done, but nothing more. I didn't really get successful with baking sourdough bread until I got a proofer. But that was my own fault for starting in the winter where my kitchen was very cold. There are ways to gauge the dough by looking at it. When the dough is underproofed, it's doming. When the fermentation is right, it's starting to flatten. And when the dough is overproofed, it's starting to sag towards the middle. My method is to put the dough in a see-through container, level the top of the dough, mark where the top is on the outside of the container, and then let the dough grow between 25 to 50%. Then shape it, and then it needs a cold fermentation for at least 8 hours. If you want to drop the cold ferment, you need to final proof the dough, or you will probably underproof the dough. You can use the poke method to check if the dough is ready to bake. Wet your finger? No, in water. Don't lick it, you pig. Poke the dough in the Banneton. If it fills very quickly, it's still underproofed. If it fills kind of slowly and leaves a small indentation, it's ready to bake. And if it just leaves an indentation, it's unfortunately overproofed. To fix this, you can put the dough in a tin and bake it from there. That was the last question. If you still have questions, please put them in the comments below, and I might make another video about this topic. I hope you learned something today. See you next time.